Yes, good afternoon. It's another beautiful day. I can look outside my window and I can see the cloud is clear, patched with bright, brightly white clouds, and the afternoon is generally mellow. I don't know what your time zone is, but I want to take this special opportunity to welcome you once again back to my channel, the Pen Collective Tom. That is the name of my channel in case you haven't visited my channel, or if this is your first time to join my classes, then I would like you to know that my channel is called the Pen Collective Tom. Now, before we get into the meat of our lesson, let me perhaps explain briefly why I decided to name this channel the Pen Collective. Now, sometimes way back in 1989, around not 1989, but in the year 2009, when I was starting off as a freelance worker, I had a contract, a very good contract. At that particular time, I was working for just $1 per day. And one morning when I checked my mail, I found that I'd got a contract. And this contract was for $5 for every 500 words. Now I thought, hey, this is good. I've always worked for $1 for 500 words, and here is someone offering me $5 for 500 words. This is marvelous. So I went ahead and signed the contract, and I began working on the assignments that the webmaster assigned me. But after some time, I realized that I was delivering my assignments, but there were no payments forthcoming. And then when I checked on the platform, that is on freelancer.com, where I began my freelance work as a copywriter, as a web content developer, when I checked, I realized that actually there was something wrong with the contract. So I went to the forum, raised my question, identified the particular contract, and to my surprise, so many other people from the Philippines, from India, from Pakistan, from South Africa, even from the United States, so many people picked the issue and they raised their complaint. Everybody apparently had been working on the same contract, had delivered over 20 articles of 500 words length, and none of us had been paid. So we thought, hey, this guy's taken us for a ride. And we introduced each other. And then we decided, why don't we work together so that in future we can always protect each other. Now we decided to form a group. And I remember it was one lady from the Philippines who decided that we should call our group the Pen Collective. Now we worked for some time, but due to logistical problems, due to working in different time zones, we could not coordinate well, and therefore we decided to disband the group on mutual agreement and mutual understanding. As I'm speaking, we are still friends with all the workers. Some were from Kenya, others were from India, from Pakistan, from the United States. We still communicate a lot, we exchange ideas, and we ensure that we keep each other informed of the latest trends about web content development. Anyway, I was just trying to explain why my channel is called the Pen Collective. Now, for those of you who are advanced or might have been advanced learners of history, you may as well know that collective was a term used in most communist regimes. Now, the governments in communist administered states classified or grouped people into working units, which were known as collectives. So we could have a farmers collective, we could have a traders collective, a teachers collective, etc. And while you are in the collective, you are supposed to comply with the rules that were stipulated laid down by members of the collective. You are supposed to act within the norms that the collective provided. So essentially, what I'm trying to imply here is that if you subscribe to my channel, then I'll expect you to also subscribe to certain laid down procedures. I'll be mentioning them from time to time. They are not cast in stone, and I'll try that those who subscribe and become my students get an opportunity to act within the confines of rules or regulations that can ensure our studies are as amicable and as benefiting as possible. Now, I'm giving this speech because my lessons are not only intended for students in Kenya, but I believe there's so many other people who will subscribe to this channel who might want to learn English language and literature alongside the Kenyan students. So I believe that if I use generalities at certain times, then I'll be communicating to a wider audience that goes beyond high school students in Kenya. Now, that is just a bit, by the way, I was just setting the environment, ensuring that I'm ready to face the camera well and continue with the lesson. Now, as you saw from my preview, I'd promised that I would continue with the last lesson we had. I want this to be incremental. I want this to be in stages so that actually we don't jump or hop from here and there. I want a consistent mode of delivery that can ensure you can refer to what we have covered, connect it with what we're doing, and focus ahead to what we want to do. Well, there's a point I want to make here, especially for an audience that might be from the international marketplace, that the English language syllabus in Kenya is integrated, is combined. The curriculum developers in our country decided that literature would be studied alongside English language or English grammar, which to me I think was a mistake. Actually, my opinion is that the study of the English language and the study of literature was and is diluted, very much diluted, to the extent that even, I'm afraid to say this, at university level, when you look at the curriculum, then these are certain things which during the old syllabus were covered at high school level. When I talk of high school for young learners, during my time, we had Form 1 to Form 4, which was secondary level education, and then we had another 2 years, Form 5 and 6, which was high school. Then high school in Kenya really meant high school, and we are very proud to be members of that exclusive academic club. Let me call it so, because in the villages, in towns, people who were in high school were regarded highly. They were considered to be academically well endowed, intellectually predisposed to be leaders in their societies. So during my time, literature was an independent subject. And I remember at high school, apart from covering European literature, studying books by writers like Charles Dickens, studying drama by Shakespeare, we also covered literature in Africa, where we studied different authors, and there was an element of oral literature, and then we had poetry, and then we had critical appreciation that involved a little bit of grammar, comprehension, and listening. So, the subject was quite broad, and this gave students adequate time to master the subjects properly. But that being said, what I was playing is that the current syllabus is integrated so that certain elements of grammar are learned within literature and certain elements of literature are learned within grammar lessons. So I'll try to stick to that in recognition of the requirements of Kenyan syllabus. But most importantly, what I'm going to do is to try sometimes and go beyond the scope of the scope of our Kenyan syllabus. Now, today, last time I introduced poetry, purposely because I wanted us to develop our lessons, as I mentioned last time, properly. Now, there's an element of poetry that I'd mentioned regarding issues of comprehension, interpretation, and understanding. And I remember I clearly stated that it is very difficult to appreciate a poem. It is very difficult to arrive at the meaning of a poem in case you've not comprehended. So to link a bit of grammar with that lesson, I would like us today to look at the importance of reading, listening, and writing skills. Now, let me just make a point. I don't want to rattle on like a chatterbox. I don't want to speak as if I'm drawing all this material from memory. Of course, a lot of it will come from my head, but to make the lesson look spontaneous, to make the lesson be natural, I want to act like a real classroom teacher, a teacher in a real classroom situation. So you can see here are my notes. Now, if you see me not looking at you, if you see me not addressing the screen, then know I'm referring at my notes. This will enable me to keep within the confines of the subject matter I would like us to tackle today. You can see that I really prattle a lot, and if I'm left to my own devices, I might talk on and on and on and on, forgetting that behind my computer there are students who are supposed to follow my lesson. So don't worry, if you see my head bent, then I'm simply referring to my notes. I'm well prepared, my friends. I have several slides here, mechanical slides, let me call them, that we're going to use. Now, having said a lot about the introduction, I'm taking this opportunity to welcome you to our grammar lesson this afternoon. As I've already said, what we're going to study is the importance of reading, listening, and writing skills. One thing that most students do not realize is that the ability to read fluently and efficiently is vital both in school and even for life after school. This is something you might not realize, but if you go through your schooling period without mastering the different methods and ways of reading fluently, reading efficiently, then you will realize that even later on in life, you might have difficulties communicating. Now, it doesn't matter what you want to become in life. It doesn't matter what you will end up being. What is important is that you acquire these skills. And because listening and comprehension are something to do with language, I want us to examine certain aspects of listening skills or certain aspects of comprehension skills that will come in handy to enable you tackle your exams, to enable you integrate and fit well in society, to enable you demonstrate a high aptitude, to make you deliver your contract, to be a high performer in your place of work. You will need these skills. So whatever else you might want to be in life, whether you want to be a doctor, whether you want to be a lawyer, whether you want to be a politician, it doesn't matter. Or whether you'll become a business person, all that will matter later on is how you will use the skills you have acquired during your English study lessons to enhance different aspects of your personality in life. Now, the reason why it is important to master reading skills is because ultimately, good reading skills will not only improve your performance in school subjects, that is very, very important. If you're not able to read and comprehend well, then you cannot tackle the questions during exam times well. Let me just say here that English is the mother of all subjects. It is the king. It is the queen of all subjects because the mode of examinations, the manner in which exams are prescribed to you require you to have a high command of the English language. And therefore, reading skills will not only improve your performance in schools subjects, but it will also help you to perfect your communication skills later on in life. That is very, very important. Now, the best way to develop your reading skills is to practice extensive reading. You can see right behind me, there are books. I brought these here deliberately as a show to prove to you that I am a very consistent reader. I am quite bookish And that is why I strive all the times to ensure that I perfect, I polish, and I refine my communication skills. Now, so extensive reading helps in information gathering. That is one thing, very, very important, that if you're used to reading a lot, then the skills you acquire as a fluent and an efficient reader will help you when you're doing some kind of research work, the type I do as a writer. I'm a research writer on the internet. I research all sorts of topics, and since I started writing web content on the internet, that is about 11 years ago, I've written about so many things that sometimes I'm not even sure what relates to what. I've researched all subjects, including rocket science. And when I started, it was a little bit difficult for me to get the ideas I wanted, to put my writing in an appealing way. But the more I read and the more I looked at how other writers put down their information, I gradually developed my skills, and these days it's just touch and go, touch and go. Whatever subject I'm given, I find it very, very easy to put down my ideas. That comes as a result of extensive reading. So the books you can see behind me are here as an illustration, as an indication that the tools that can make you perfect your reading skills are books. Not by listening to videos like this lesson, not by watching movies, not by listening to music, but through reading. The development of your cognition. Cognition means your ability to think, your ability to reason. So your cognitive development, the development of your cognition powers or cognitive powers, depends a lot on books. Now, to be my good student, I'll give you challenge from time to time where you will actually have reading targets. You will have reading targets so that you can read a specific number of books, a specific number of chapters every day. Anyway, the point I'm trying to bring home to you is that extensive reading helps in information gathering, that is in research, and learning of new concepts or ideas. A concept is simply an idea. So for you to learn different concepts of mechanical engineering, concepts of electrical engineering, concepts of medicine if you want to be a doctor, historical concepts, economic concepts, all these will only be easy for you to digest, for you to interpret, if at all you read extensively. And so extensive reading, as I've said, let me just repeat that, helps in information gathering or research, learning of new concepts, and acquisition of more knowledge. That is very important. I've just mentioned there that as a result of my research work, I have accumulated a lot of wealth on different subjects. Sometimes I surprise myself when I find myself in a situation where I am actually trying to work around a concept. I'm trying to develop a parallel line of thought regarding something I read without actually being aware of where I specifically read this. So what I'm saying here is that extensive reading helps in information gathering or research, learning of new concepts or ideas, and acquisition of more knowledge on a broad spectrum of subjects, on a wide range. Broad spectrum simply means wide range, on a broad spectrum of subjects. Now, you will realize that through wide readership, you as a learner will constantly be exposed to new vocabulary, new sentence structure, and different registers. Allow me to explain that. I've said when you read widely, you'll realize that as a learner, you'll be exposed to 1, new vocabulary, 2, new registers, and 3, new sentence structures. New sentence structures will enable you to communicate, to write, or to talk in different styles. Remember, the English language is quite rich in idioms. I know you always pronounce it idiom. That is the wrong pronunciation. I'm talking to Kenyans specifically here. The word is not idiom, it is idiom. So the English language is rich in idioms. It is rich in figurative language. It's rich in a lot of ways, although it is also absurd. When you consider some of the rules of the English language, you'll also realize that it's quite absurd. Why should, for example, foot become fit and not fits? That kind of thing. Well, that depends on whoever invented the language. It must have been some crazy guy, I believe. If it was a group, then the group must have been an assortment of guys who never thought in a clear way. But it's a beautiful language. That is what I'm trying to say here. So through wide readership, you as a learner will constantly be exposed to new concepts, new vocabulary, new sentence structures, and different registers. Allow me to explain two words I've used there. One, vocabulary, and two, registers. There's a mistake people often make regarding the word vocabulary. They assume, and rightly so, depending on their level of linguistic skills, they assume that the word vocabulary means a new or big word that you use, so that you might hear someone commenting that, hey, that online teacher uses a lot of vocabulary. You can say in Kenyan lingo that, hey, that guy really uses vox. No, vocabulary does not mean a new word. Vocabulary simply refers to any word, the range of words within which you can use to communicate. Things like and, it, is, etc. are all part of your vocabulary. So when you read extensively, you will widen your vocabulary. One, you will learn about different words, what parts of speech they form, how they're used, and how they are applied in everyday communication. Now, reading will also acquaint you as a learner with good models or different styles of language use. I've already expelled that. You need, therefore, to devise positive and easily adaptable strategies that will make your reading interesting and fulfilling. That is very, very important, my friends. Many people have not nurtured or developed the reading culture. Many people see books as an anathema, something they would rather not touch, something that is almost their poison, let me put it that way. But the point is, they have not devised suitable strategies that can enable them consistently practice or develop their reading habits. Behind me again, you can see these books. Most of them are works of fiction, but some are not works of fiction. For example, here, there's a book about the unexpected joy of sobriety. This is a book by an ex-alcoholic. Well, I've gone through that stage. We'll come back to that later. I'm now recovered, though, 2 years now. I haven't had a pint. I haven't had a puff. Now, that book over there is somebody's own account of her life as a drunkard, her life as an alcoholic, and her present life. Over here, you can see Tunnel 21. These are an assortment of books. So I love reading fiction because fiction enables me to travel to a different or exotic place I've never been to. Now, I was one time amusing a friend by telling him that, you know what? I have been to so many places. I've been to New York. I've been to Australia, Sydney. I've been to the farthest end of the world. I've been to Antarctica. I've been to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And he was wondering, hey, when did you do this? I've always seen you around. And I said, hey, through the books I read. Books can transport you to places you've never been to. Books will enable you to interact with different cultural values, with different modes of existence, with different models of doing things, and this will help you acquire other skills that are intrinsic, things that you never really consciously think about as you are doing so many things. Now, the best way to develop a reading culture is to find materials that interest you. Begin with things that are not complicated. Begin with easy books, interesting books, magazines, newspaper articles that interest you, and make a habit. I'm coming back to that shortly, of reading these regularly. At the beginning, you'll find this a little bit difficult, but as time goes by, it will get easier and easier until reading becomes an addiction to you. I'm addicted to reading. And if a day passes without me reading at least a chapter of something new, then I feel something is really, really wrong with me. And I can sometimes bolt out of bed in the middle of the night, and the first thing that hits my mind is, hey, Tom, you never read anything today. I scramble for my spotlight or to put on my lamp, and there, I begin reading. So I'm trying to encourage you to be a good reader. There's no way you can develop your cognitive abilities. There's no way you will develop your comprehension, power of comprehension and interpretation. There's no way you will develop styles and manners of developing concepts that is called conceptual thinking. You cannot enlarge your scope of conceptual thinking, that is coming up ideas and developing them, without being a good reader. So you need to devise positive and easily adaptable strategies that will make your readings interesting and fulfilling. Now, some of the reading strategies you can use include, I've already mentioned these. One, setting aside specific and regular times for leisure or general reading. Times when you're not reading for exam purposes, times when you're not reading because you want to do some research or to find out some important information, but times that you read just to relax, just to feel comfortable, just to pass time. You need, that is one way of inculcating, of building the reading habit in you. Set aside specific times, specific and regular, not specific and intermittent, not specific and sporadic, not specific and occasional. Intermittent, sporadic, occasional mean the same thing. I'm explaining words, so if you're listening to me, I hope you're taking note of some of these. Now, you need to set aside specific times for regular reading. Two, you need to develop or build a library of your reading materials. It's very important. You can see my library is here. This is just part of my library. But if you were to see my library, it is quite huge. And one thing, there is not a single book in my library that I've not read almost 2 or 3 times. When I'm not working, I spend a lot of my time reading. Actually, it is so much part and parcel of me that I don't know how life would be without books. I don't know what I would do. Right now, sometimes when I listen to the radio, I'm amused to hear people complaining of boredom, complaining of lack of things to do. And I say, hey, during this time, if I were to be quarantined, my friend, I would simply make one request. Please, before you take me in there, get me a pile of books, as many as you can. The more voluminous they are, the better. That would make my world. So you need to build. The point I'm trying to fix into your mind is that you need to build relevant materials, good materials in a library. As a student, because you've got an exam impending, I would encourage you to build a library of materials that are relevant to the subjects that you cover in school. Sometimes, don't even read to cram. Just pick a book and read. Just read like you're reading a novel. Read as if nothing else matters in this world. Over time, you'll realize that a lot of the information that you come across are embedded. Let me use that term, embedded into your mind. These are subconscious processes. Sometimes you can actually surprise yourself by realizing that You can express certain ideas in certain ways. You can quote, you can contribute to conversations meaningfully without actually knowing how these ideas entered your mind. No, the subconscious mind is such a powerful tool. It has a way of recording lots and lots and lots of information. So be a good reader, my friend. Practice your reading. I want you to belong to my class, the Pen Collective, where the first rule is you must read at least a single book every other week apart from the subjects you are tackling in school. That will be my rule. And of course, when we shall advance and I develop or my lesson progresses to a one-on-one contact on, say, Zoom or Skype, I'll find out whether the people who are following or people who belong to the Pen Collective channel are actually living by the standards stipulated in this channel. Now, giving yourself specific reading targets or goals, e.g. a chapter of a novel per day, a book every week, etc. I've already stated that. So we have three components of developing a regular, a persistent, a constant, and an addictive culture of reading. As I've said, this is 1, setting aside specific and regular times for leisure or general reading. 2, building a library of reading materials. And 3, giving yourself specific reading targets or goals, e.g. a chapter of a novel, a page in a magazine, a book every week. Sometimes you can just read the Bible. Actually, I've read the Bible 2 times from Genesis to Revelation. Sometimes I read it, the first time I read it through book by book, and the second time I read it by picking books at random. I could just decide that, hey, today I want to look at what Paul says in Romans, or just relax on my bed or on my seat. Well, I just said on my bed. I have this poor habit which encourages me to read throughout the night, of reading when I'm lying on my bed. Don't develop it. It is so distracting. But anyway, the point is, find a comfortable place. Curl yourself somewhere in a chair and practice your reading. Even the Bible. If you don't have anything to read, don't say you don't have books. In every home, there is a Bible. Use that. Especially the New International Version. It has some beautiful expressions, some beautiful language. Another tool that you need for your reading, though you should not use it concurrently, or you should not use it at the same time as you are reading, is a dictionary. That must be, not should be, that must be, underlined and bold, must be your companion in readership. It's a very important tool. There are several ways why we need a dictionary. 1, we need a dictionary to dig or to dig the meaning of words. Dictionaries explain the meaning of different words outside the scope of our vocabulary. 2, a dictionary will teach you how to spell words correctly. It's a very useful tool for improving your spelling techniques. 3, a dictionary will indicate to you how a word is used, the context in which the word can be used. 3, a dictionary will indicate the part of speech that a word belongs to. Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? Is it an adverb? Is it an adjective? Which other part of speech am I leaving out? Whatever it is, anyway, you know about parts of speech, verbs, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, etc. So an adjective will indicate to you what part of speech a word belongs to. 3, an adjective, I said earlier on that the English language is pretty rich in idioms. It is so beautifully enriched with different forms of idiomatic expression. So in a dictionary, when you see some definition in bold letters, that means it is an idiomatic expression. So by frequently reading the dictionary, which sometimes I do, just like I would be reading any other book, you will come across different forms of idiomatic expression. So if you've always used a dictionary just to find out the meaning of a word, my friend, you've been underutilizing that precious book. Next time, when you're using a dictionary, ensure that you not only find out the meaning of a word, but you also find out what part of speech the word belongs to, an adjective, an adverb, a noun, etc. How is the word used in different contexts? Under what situations can the word be used? Is it a formal expression? In other words, an expression that can be used in official situations or circumstances, or is it an informal situation? So what I was explaining here is that while setting your reading goals, you also need to be a good companion of a dictionary. Now, to effectively cultivate a lasting and lifelong reading habit, start by reading literature or materials that appeals to you. That is very, very important. I've already mentioned that. Don't forget this. If you begin with boring subjects, if you begin with technical content, then you're going to find it boring and appealing, always a waste of time. But if you begin with things that are fulfilling, things that interest you, gradually you will be drawn into a journey of reading exploration. You will want now to expand your reading horizons by studying or reading different subjects at different times for different purposes. So the selection of reading materials should be done very carefully, especially if you're a student. If possible, always have your pre-reading activities well planned in advance. You just don't bump into a book and decide you want to read it even if you hadn't planned. Psych yourself psychologically. Prepare yourself mentally that at this evening, between 6 and 8 o'clock, instead of watching the television, I'm going to read a chapter on Kifo Kisimani, for example, or I'm going to read an article I saw in a magazine. Let me just tell you, another source of reading materials, allow me to digress please, are newspapers. Most people buy newspapers and concentrate on the headlines, which to me are always actually, how do I put it without sounding offensive? But almost irrelevant, especially when you look at the type of headlines that our dailies in Kenya constantly carry. It's a lot of, I don't want to use rude language, but it's a lot of information which leaves a lot to be desired. Let me politely put it so. It's a lot of mundane stuff, ordinary, repeated stuff. But people concentrate on the headlines and then use the newspaper either to light their jikos or to bind meat or use it for some other purposes, forgetting that outside the headline, the content of a newspaper is everlasting. The features contained therein, the stories contained in newspapers are quite infinite in appeal. Let me put it that way. They can always appeal to you. I always surprise myself by really getting immersed, by really getting deeply into a newspaper article, say, about things that happened in the 80s, things that happened in the 70s. If I come across them, I find them fascinating. They transport me back to that affable, to that easy, to that comfortable and relaxed world we had in the past. So your selection of reading materials matters a lot, and you need to put a lot of care into the type of materials you're selecting for your reading purposes. Now, at this stage of your studies, I highly recommend that you should develop your reading skills through the study of the literature in your curriculum or syllabus. If you're a Form 4, if you're a Form 2, if you're a Form 1, no matter what your grade is, try to limit yourself to reading the set texts that are prescribed for your syllabus. As a teacher, I'm often appalled, I'm often disgusted to see that students hardly know the content of a set text. Actually, I'm very, very happy that the ministry decided to do away with the guidebooks. They were important, yes, but they should have been used, or they ought to have been used by teachers. Some students thought this was a shortcut of tackling the set text, so they would not read the set text, they would read the guidebook instead, which is a poor approach to the study of literature. You need to read the text over and over again, if need be, cram it, so that you can always place specific references, you can always place specific ideas, you can always place specific characters, you can always place specific stylistic features in their right context within the unraveling or within the development of the plot. So during this stage of your studies, I'll recommend that you develop your reading skills through the study of the literature in your curriculum. So, in your curriculum, the study of literary works is presented under the intensive reading unit. That is specifically the curriculum of Kenya secondary schools. In the Form 4s studying literature or literary works. The word literary simply means something written. Literary, not literally. There's a difference between literally and literary. Literally means done in an open, not really an open way, but done the way it is, taking something the way it is, that is literal, okay? In poetry, for example, when you talk of the literal meaning of a text, or in a novel, the literal meaning of a text is the surface meaning, what your eyes or your mind immediately sees. So that is literally. But literary has to do with things that are written. All the materials you read regarding things that are written are literary materials. So in my notes here, I've indicated that in your curriculum, the study of literary works. Literary works refers to serious works of literature, drama, poetry, novels, and short stories or anthologies. So in your curriculum, the study of literary works is presented under the intensive reading unit. Intensive from the word intense. Something intense is something that is characterized by feverish activities, characterized by a lot of concentration, characterized by a lot of involvement. So to be an intensive reader means you really pay keen and particular attention to what you're reading. So in your integrated syllabus, you'll realize that most literary works come under units designated, or units that are earmarked or set aside as intensive reading units. Now, the different literary genres, well, the word is spelled G-E-N-R-E-S. Most people pronounce it. I'll teach you about pronunciation. That is something I forgot to mention behind there. A dictionary, most importantly, teaches you how to pronounce words, how the right intonation to use, where you place the stress and where you don't when pronouncing words. Though different accents, for example, the Kenyan accent, the South African accent, the American accent, the British accent, the Australian accent, the Indian accent, all have various ways on where they place their intonations. But if you really want to speak English the way Englishmen do, then you should learn from the dictionary where words are stressed or not. These are indicated by certain marks in a word. I'll show you this later. So the word genre, which means most people pronounce genre, it's not genre, it is pronounced genre. And genre is English borrows heavily from so many languages. Even Kiswahili has been borrowed, because if you look at the current edition of the Advanced Learners English Dictionary, you will realize that words like mama, kanga, bibi are now accepted as in the English language. It's a very acquisitive language. Oh, Azungu. Anyway, now what I'm trying to explain is that the word genre, which means a form or style, or a form or style of literature. In literature, we have different genres. The novel is a genre. A drama or a play is a genre. An anthology, either of poetry or an anthology of short stories, is a genre. And then oral literature is also a genre. So different classifications. Yes, the word genre means classification. It's borrowed from the French language. So the different literary genres are introduced to you so that you can familiarize yourself with all the issues related to the themes, style, plot, and characterization. Notice, plot, style, themes, and characterizations are important when you are critically critiquing or analyzing or interpreting the plot of a narrative or a story. So the different literary genres are introduced to you so that you can familiarize yourself with all the issues related to the themes, styles, plot, and characterization. Therefore, I want to employ my tutorials. This is something I intend to do to encourage you and to facilitate your ability to read extensively. That is the main purpose of this lesson. I want to emphasize and even re-emphasize that many Kenyans are poor readers. Many Kenyans, no wonder even right now, as the pandemic is ravaging the world, many Kenyans have at best superficial and irrelevant, misleading information because they hardly take their time to read and find out. I remember a post I put on Facebook directed people to websites, say the website by the CDC, that is the Center for Disease Control, or the websites of the World Health Organization, or the website of the Kenyan's own Ministry of Health. These are places where you can get accurate information about the pandemic, about the coronavirus. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that a lot of us don't like reading. A lot of us have very poor reading habits. And yet reading, for your information, is one of the most relaxing pastimes you can ever develop. I'm assuring you because I am a reader. I am a writer. So the whole purpose of this lesson is to encourage you, to motivate you, to inspire you to be a voracious. Voracious simply means, in relation to animals, a voracious feeder is an animal that eats a lot. Say a giraffe is a voracious eater. Oh, let me use a relevant example. The locusts that are impending, are preparing to invade our country according to the Organization for, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. Locusts are coming back again by May, they're telling us so. And locusts eat a lot of food per day. That is why they destroy any form of green vegetation wherever they pass. I'm trying to explain the word voracious. So locusts are voracious eaters. A voracious reader is a person who reads a lot, a bookish person, someone who loves books for the sake of books, someone who likes books as a receptacle or a container of immeasurable language and knowledge and concepts. So the different literary genres, as I've already said, will introduce you to intensive reading as a means of familiarizing yourself with all the issues related to themes, style, plot, and characterization. We shall handle those in a future lesson. Therefore, I want to employ my tutorials to encourage you and to facilitate your ability to read extensively. Now, your syllabus being one that is integrated, one that is combined, your syllabus being one that is integrated, the use of reading to enhance is to improve the quality of something, to enhance, E-N-H-A-N-C-E, H-A-N-C-E, enhance, to improve the standard, to improve the quality of something. So your reading being one that is integrated, the use of reading to enhance the development of other language skills, such as listening, speaking, and writing, is imperative. Something imperative is something highly necessary. Something imperative is something very, very important. I also want to stress that what you read should form the basis of your oral presentations during public speaking. Remember, I said that regardless of what you want to be later on in life, your ability to communicate effectively will be very important in different situations, in different settings, at different times. And so here, I'm saying that I want to encourage you to make reading be the basis of your oral presentations during public speaking events, and I also want it to be the foundation of your creative essay writing skills. Something I learned earlier on is that a good writer is a good reader. You cannot be a writer. There's so many people who aspire to be writers. They want to write about, they have several stories they wish to write, but they cannot do so because they are not competent readers. They are not effective readers. They are not fluent readers. Now, one way of developing your creative writing skills is to be an intense and regular reader. Now, I know that some of you have very poor and bad reading habits. I'm sorry to say this, but that is the truth, my friends, isn't it? Some of you have very poor and bad reading habits that you may have carried on from primary school or which you acquire at home. This should not interfere with your reading habits. Whatever you see happening at home should not be something you copy. Hook, line, and sinker. You should not swallow everything hook, line, and sinker. If nobody likes reading at you in your home, you should not be like them. Be different. Concentrate, try to make yourself a voracious reader. So, in primary school, sometimes the culture of reading is not so much encouraged, but let me tell you, I developed my reading habit right from Standard 4 when I was still in primary school. That is when I started reading. I realized that the book, there were Tom and Mildred, were they, or Tom and Mary. Tom was used frequently. My name is normally used in so many instances. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, etc. I wonder what is it with the name Tom. But anyway, those books really influenced my reading culture and habits. So if you have reading habits that you picked up from primary school, if you have reading habits, poor reading habits that you've acquired from your environment at home, don't worry. Relax. I'll help you. I'm a professional. And if you take what I'm telling you seriously, then you're going to develop a very consistent and lifelong reading culture. You should not let debilitating habits like frequently staring at the screen, playing video games, watching movies, those should not be your only pastime. Try something different. One thing I want to make you learn is that when you're starting to practice reading, it's a little bit difficult, my friend. The going is pretty tough. It's uphill going. But when you reach the peak, what happens next? You begin going downhill. Now, reading becomes as easy as the crow flies, or so they say in literature. So the point I want to prove to you is that when you read, you will not only expand your scope and horizons, you will not only acquire new ideas, you will not only develop different styles and models of speaking and writing, but you will also be highly knowledgeable about certain things. Now, to conclude my lesson, I'd like us to look at briefly a few of the words that I've used if you will go over there, if you listen to this video again, you will earmark, or you will identify, or you will know, you will underline some words I've used. I've used words such as ultimately, concept, acquisition, broad spectrum, vocabulary, be exposed to, acquaint, introductory, voracious, bookworm, bookish, literary, intensive, genre, devise or device, adaptable, strategies, interchangeable, debilitating habits, extensive, facilitate, integrated, and enhance. Those are words I've used which I believe might be outside the scope of your vocabulary. I'll repeat once more. The words are ultimately. Ultimately means finally. Concept means idea. Acquisition is the noun form of the word to acquire. Acquisition, to acquire, to get, to have, to own. Acquisition. Broad spectrum, I explained earlier on, is a wide scope of something. A wide range, that is a broad spectrum. To be exposed to something is to be familiarized to something. To be exposed to. Right now, we are taking every precaution not to be exposed to the coronavirus, not to familiarize ourselves with the coronavirus. Something I need to explain here is that words in the English language can be applied in different contexts and different circumstances. We shall come to that, the contextual use of words. Now, to be exposed to as used in my lesson is to be familiarized. To familiarize yourself with reading habits. But to be exposed to be something, to be exposed to a disease is to be attacked or to be prone to infection by a disease. Are you getting the different meanings? Yes, I hope so. You're doing that. Now, vocabulary, which I explained, does not mean a new or strange word, but rather vocabulary is simply any word that you use to communicate in whichever language. That is part and parcel of vocabulary. I know most of you must now be surprised that, hey, we thought vocabulary means a big and unfamiliar word. No, absolutely not. That is not the case. Now, acquaint. To acquaint yourself with something is to get to know something, to be familiarized with something. For example, you can use a sentence like, I made his acquaintance. Oh, acquaintance is a different forms of the word. You know, the English language is so rich in usage that if you're a proficient user, if you're an advanced user of the language, like I believe I am, I don't know, that will be upon you to judge, but you'll realize that there's so many technical and beautiful and different ways of expressing yourself using the same word in different contexts by applying different parts of speech that the word belongs to. So to acquaint yourself with something is to get to know. To be familiarized with yourself, to acquaint is A-C-Q-U-A-I-N-T-S. Acquaint. I'm acquainted to so and so. In your Facebook page, you always see when you are asking for friendship, there's the word acquaintance. In other words, is it somebody you're familiar with? Is it just a friend, just another person you know, or someone close and personal? That is acquaint. Introductory, from the word introduction. To introduce, introduction. So introductory. Something introductory is anything that has elements of introduction within it. That is introductory. And then voracious, I've already explained. A voracious eater is somebody who eats a lot, like the locusts. A voracious reader is somebody who reads a lot. Now, bookworm. A bookworm is somebody who is always in books. Someone who is always buried in books. And my friends, there is no way you will improve your knowledge. There's no way, there's no method you can use to make yourself intelligent, to make yourself knowledgeable, if you do not become a bookworm. Please, please. I'm asking you honestly, and I'm honestly telling you that later on in life, you will realize that reading different types of literature is very important for your everyday activities. There are things that you'll read now which will later on help you in life. So bookish is to be a lover of books. That is the same thing again. And then literary, I explained that. Anything written is literary. Intensive, characterized by a lot of serious activities. That is something intensive. And then genre, I explained genre is simply a classification, a class of literature. That is genre. I'm sorry for moving about. I'm a little bit feeling strained. I'm sitting at a folded position. I'm about to end my lesson. Now, devise. Devise with a V, D-E-V-I-S-E. We have two different types of devise. A devise with D-E-V-I-C-E. What you have is a device, but you can devise, you can formulate, you can make. To devise is to create, rather, a means, a way of doing something. There's a device helps you to create things, or to a phone, a smartphone is a device for communication. A television is an entertainment device, a tool or an equipment. But to devise something is to create, to find a way of doing something. Now, adaptable. Adaptable from the word adapt. To use or to borrow the quality of something, to do something else, to get used to doing something in a given way by applying the qualities of something else, that is, to adapt to. So adaptable or adaptability, acquiring the ability to use the qualities or characteristics of something else to do another thing. And then we've got strategies. Strategies simply are methods, ways or plans of doing things. And then we've got interchangeably. This is a question I wanted to ask, or something I wanted us to start with. Let me refer. I intended to say that out of our lesson, we're going to learn vocabulary. And to start our study of vocabulary, let us begin with the very common words, may and might. Under what situations do you use may? And under what circumstances can you use the word might? Are they interchangeable? Can you use may and might interchangeably? Or is there specific situations or contexts in which you can use might and not may, and where you can use may or might? Now, we'll come to that. Get prepared. There are so many other word combinations that a lot of us in Kenya and elsewhere else where people are not fast or native speakers of the English language misuse, but because they are used frequently by almost everybody else, with the time everyone else assumes that is the way the words are correctly applied. And that's why sometimes when you're speaking to, say, a native speaker of the English language, say a Canadian, an American, or a Briton, most times you'll hear them saying pardon, pardon, excuse me. In other words, you must, when they're doing that, they're trying to alert you that, hey, you've said something there that doesn't make a lot of sense. That is simply because you are not familiar with the correct usage of the word. We shall come back to that. We shall come to that. So interchangeably is the word. Interchangeably means things that can be used in rotation, either one or the other in a given context. So that is to do something to do something interchangeably is to do it in different ways. Yeah, that explains it better. To do something in different ways. And then debilitating habits. Something debilitating is something that hinders, an impediment, an obstacle that prevents you from doing something well. Something debilitating, something that drags you back, something that prevents you. So debilitating habits are habits that prevent you. Debilitating reading habits are habits that prevent you from being a good reader. And then we've got extensive. Extensive is ordinary, that is wide. to a large extent. Okay, that is something extensive. And then registers. The word register here, I know most of you assume or have always known that the word register refers to a list containing names or a list containing items. Well, that is one meaning of registers. But as used during my lecture, to register is to understand the way. Register refers to the way you perceive or the way you understand a word, the way you understand a sentence. So different people have different registers. In other words, different people understand things differently. In a classroom situation, I know there are those who have got a high capacity register, a high powered register, those whose understanding is quick, chap chap. But some have slow registers. It takes them time to understand what is being explained, for example. Now, register refers to your mental ability to grasp, your mental ability to absorb and interpret some information. Yeah, that puts it well. That ability to absorb and interpret information is register, that sense of perception. And then we go to facilitate, which simply means to enable. To facilitate, something that facilitates you, from the word facility, is something that enables you to obtain or enables you to get something done. And then integrated, I explained, that means combine. And then finally enhance, which I've also explained, means to improve the quality of something. Well, I've really had long go at these. I don't know whether the lesson was pretty fast or whether you've really come out with something. Please, if you've not gotten anything, get in touch with me. You can contact me via my Facebook page, Tom Boyer. Just look for the word Tom Boyer. And since you're seeing me now, it's very easy to pick me from the list that rolls down when you're searching for a friend. So be my friend on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube, the Pen Collective channel, the channel on which we're now broadcasting this lesson. Or you can contact me via email. My email, I have several emails, about 5. I use them for different purposes. But for this lesson, let us use the Pen Collective. One of my emails is the Pen Collective, THEPENCOLLECTIV, the Pen Collective Tom, as one word, at gmail.com. The Pen Collective Tom at gmail.com. That is my Gmail address. Use my Gmail address, and then I can invite you to share a Google Doc with me so that I can further explain what I've covered today. The more you interact with me, the more you attend you visit my channel regularly, the more you will learn a lot. And as I explained earlier on, I'm trying to find out the best way that I can use to communicate with you, the best mode of delivery. But the problem is that even on Facebook, very few people are getting me sincere feedbacks, which I think is wrong, my friends. If you think this is crap, just tell me, hey, Tom, that was crap. If you think I'm too fast and you're not able to follow my lesson, tell me, hey, please slow down, tone down your speed a bit. Well, this used to happen to me in class. Sometimes I would be teaching literature or history or geography, and I would forget that students are here. I would just be talking on and on and on. And one time, a student just got up. It was a lady. And told me, hey, Mwalimu, I was sleeping, and I've just woken up and found that you're still talking. That thing is like a lullaby. And another student said, oh, Mwalimu, you think you're teaching? Most of us, it was an afternoon lesson. Most of us are. You're just singing a lullaby for us to go to sleep. Slow down, ask us questions, and involve us. So there's no way I can involve you on the screen, but when we get one-on-one, when you use platforms like Zoom or Skype to deliver lessons, then I believe we shall find effective ways of making our lessons as understandable and as easy to follow as possible. Otherwise, for today, that will be all. Next, we shall look at the art of creative writing skills. The art of creative writing. How can you develop creating writing abilities? Today, I've mainly concentrated on reading skills, why they're important, their usefulness in life. So next, we shall look at your writing skills. Writing and reading go together. That is why even when you're in class and the teacher is lecturing or presenting notes, it's very important that you write as you are listening. You know, I was explaining to one of my private students that there are two levels of listening. One, active listening, and two, passive listening. Now, passive listening refers to the type of listening where you're not actually involved. You're just going, but your mind is not actually on what is being said. That is passive listening. Listening with only a half of your mind on what is being said. But active listening means to be involved in the conversation. What did you say? You mean he was that crazy? Did he really do it? That is now active listening. So creative skills, writing and listening, have a connection in enhancing or developing your cognitive abilities. Knowledge does not just crash into your mind from nowhere. You've got to prepare a good environment. You've got to acclimatize your mind. To acclimatize is to make ready, to create a conducive, a good environment in your brain in which knowledge can seep. Make your mind as soft as a sponge so that you can soak in knowledge. Soak in as much knowledge as you can. Never bother whether the knowledge is useful at this time or not. Later on, sometimes ahead, you'll find, hey, stop, reality check. Do you know these and these? It's not a person who will stop you. Life will stop you and find out from you whether you're well equipped to handle a particular situation or circumstance. I'll stop there for today. I hope you've enjoyed my lesson, and I hope to hear your feedback. I repeat, I'm not yet on Instagram. Okay, I have accounts on Instagram, on Tumblr, and in so many other social channels, but I'm beginning with YouTube and Facebook. I'll gradually, step by step, expand my scope of reach so that we can use as many channels as possible. Now, for this afternoon, I hope now you know the importance of reading, how you can develop proper reading skills. We've handled about 26 new words, which according to me are words that might be outside the scope of your vocabulary. Otherwise, bye-bye for today. Have a nice evening. Have a nice afternoon. When we meet again, as I've said, we shall look at creative writing. And then after creative writing, I'll introduce an element of grammar, structural aspects of grammar, which I know many Kenyans make a mincemeat of. Mincemeat. Ile nyama ya kushagwa lile. You know it? Yeah, so many people make a mincemeat of English grammar. A lot of spoken language might sound good, but when you pay attention to the fundamental aspects, to the basic aspects of language, you realize that, hey, the sound is good, but the grammar is God. So poor. I don't want you to be a poor grammar speaker. I want you to be an effective communicator. Otherwise, bye-bye for now. Till we meet again. That is the end of our lesson today. Have a nice evening. Cheers.